Much. I'm Beastlord J. Thank you very much for joining me. Let's go ahead and check out Arc Raiders uh from Embark Studio, and the person who is giving this review is Level Cap Gaming. God damn, I gotta get better at this. Let's go ahead.
Played the heck out of it, and I couldn't be more excited for this game to release. Now, as a gamer, I've mostly admired extraction shooters from the sidelines, occasionally dipping into a few rounds of Hunt Showdown, shooter, but not overly impressed with the more ganky PvP combat that generally associates an extraction game.
So, multiplayer extraction, I have not played too many of them. I'm already loving the environment, though. It feels like it's from the Battlefield does, and the finals looks very different, right? Definitely has a future feel to it, a little goofy with some stuff, but that's the overall theme, right? This does feel more like Battlefield, and I like the way it looks.
But Arc Raiders could be the first one that I take more seriously. And I think a big part of the reason why I'm liking it so much is that it was originally conceived as a PvE co-op game, and thus the core experience was designed to be a lot of fun without relying on PvP, and it absolutely changes up the mood of the game and the enjoyment factor.
That's really cool. So they had one idea for it, decided to turn it into something else, right? And then, yeah, I like when... Actually, I'm not sure exactly what he means by that, because I'm not sure if you're fighting other people while fighting the environment. Let's keep listening and see how that's changed. I might have to do some additional research into that.
And I really want to talk about that more in this video, but first, I gotta give Embark some credit in their world crafting. The world of Arc Raiders is a masterfully rendered, post-apocalyptic, beautiful nightmare. It's kind of like Terminator meets The Running Man when it comes to the visual aesthetics. Giant robots
not
scour
really
the landscape
surprising
anything
because of the
left
finals,
alive,
right? So
and
that's
you're
actually
running around
cool.
with some retro clothing and gear, which is just fun visually. And the graphics are backed up by a studio that really knows how to cook. The game runs on Unreal Engine 5, and boy does it run. The performance is great, the visuals are stunning, and the stability is on par with a final release candidate as far as I can tell. No stuttering on my end, crashes, or any sort of performance issues the whole time through. Honestly, they could release the game as is, and I think it would get a solid reception, but it seems like Embark really want to take their time and get it right. Considering that this is Tech Test 2 and we still don't have an official release date, they're focused on dialing it in.
That's really good. So, not even done. Plays very, very well, incredibly smooth, which is the least you could ask for with any game, but especially a multiplayer shooter, right? Where every little moment is important, so you shouldn't be losing anything. I like that. So whatever they have planned coming out next involving this is great. Whatever that you'll see next time, since the game works, and they probably really just making sure that it does with a mass influx of people trying to get in, right? So that makes me happy to hear. I like that.
Now, I think most people jumping into this game for the first time are going to notice just how incredibly visceral the experience is. The audio design in particular is top of its class. So many games drop the ball when it comes to ambient sounds and distance and directional audio, but Arc tells its story through audio as much as it does visuals.
Yeah, it's the same thing that's been happening. I'm a big horror game fan, and it's a big thing that happens in horror games as well. Right, where usually when they're actually thinking about the sound is, okay, you're in a hallway walking, echo, right? Sure, scary monster sounds, but there's a big difference between some modern horror RPGs that you tend to see people go to for the sake of it's that next 1 month hit, right? And then something, let's say like old Dead Space, and then something that Dead Space recreated in the future, right with his remake, where when Dead Space was first released, horror games weren't doing too well, and it's pretty obvious why they weren't doing too well. It's because they were heavily relying on jump scares, because for some reason a lot of devs were thinking, yo, scary equals jump scare, which not really. Anybody can be jump scared. It's quiet, something's happening, jump scare. Ooh, wow, you kind of shocked me. Wow, nice. That's not really horror, right? It's all of it at once. In Dead Space captured every little moment perfectly. From hearing something that might be crawling in the background, which might not just be something like just a background noise, right? It could actually be something. Every moment in Dead Space makes you rethink what you're doing and if something's actually there, right? And if you want something to a smaller scope that also does that incredibly well, it would be Darkwood, right? Because when I played Darkwood, I did not think that a top-down horror game would actually scare me. That game made me incredibly nervous the entire time, and one of the things that you'll notice Darkwood did well was master their sound, right? The ambient sound, just the quality of it was perfect, right? Of course, it utilized a bunch of different stuff, but what you're hearing affects you as well. It's another sense. It's incredibly important and should not be left over. So it makes sense that it would translate to literally anything else when it comes to an experience, and it should. I'm glad that the finals devs had that in mind, because you should. Good to hear. And I can't keep pausing the rant like that because we're never going to get anywhere, but I'll try to keep that to a minimum. But I felt like I needed to say that because that is something that tends to get overlooked sometimes. I keep looking over here because I'm looking at my mic. I'm not used to this. Jeez. Oh yeah, I don't pay for this, so commercials. I'm so sorry. Splitgate. We're gonna get back to Splitgate. But
Alien-like beeps and alarms from the robots echo across the landscape. You'll be alerted to patrolling robots or ones that have spotted something in the distance, or if a falling drop pod is being pried open by another raider. Even the wind rushing through the trees and the river running
so
by
there are
feels
other
incredibly
teams.
realistic, placing you firmly in an environment, never making you question its authenticity. Now, the story of this world is slowly revealed through missions and clues, but even after putting quite a few hours into it, I'm still not fully aware of why these Ark robots are roaming the world and where humanity ultimately stands in their fight for survival. Being relegated to these subterranean cities with raiders venturing to the surface for supplies, is there a bigger battle plan to fight back against them, or are we all just scraping by and happy to exist for another day? I haven't figured out all the narrative plot points yet, but I'm really curious. They've sucked me in, and I want to learn more about the world.
Makes sense.
Now, coming back to my relationship
game not
with
out yet, right?
extraction
So
shooters,
it's good
I
to
tend
hear,
get
though.
frustrated by them. They rely so heavily on getting amazing loot or having to win a firefight to feel rewarding. And when that doesn't work out, the punishment often feels bigger than the potential reward, at least in my experience. But when I play Ark, I can be perfectly content to drop in, kill some robots, skulk around some buildings, load up my backpack with some decent loot, and extract. I don't have to run towards every gunshot I hear and plan the ultimate gank on an enemy. It's actually fun just exploring and looting, and there's so many crafting materials needed to progress your home base that even extracting with a backpack full of basic materials tends to be somewhat worthwhile. And
You see, it's that last part he said. It makes a lot of sense because certain games, especially like this, they tend to send you through a corridor, especially at the end. Whatever that one I was playing not too long ago. Yeah, once you got to the end game, you were essentially just running these stages again and again and again. It was no real thought to it, or it was just, I know how strong I am. I know what I need to do. It's routine now, and that gets incredibly boring. But then when you think about certain things like Dragon's Dogma, 2 specifically, right? You could go through this whole thing, have a fight with a chimera, plus this, and execute them all in a unique way. And even if the loot at the end wasn't something that you wanted, you had such an exciting and satisfying experience that it doesn't matter because a video game is the experience. You shouldn't just be doing it for the sake of getting loot, because that can just be literally anything. Or you can play something better that'll give you exactly what you want. No, you have to think about that. So I'm glad that that was something that they brought up.
Tell that this world was designed to be really fun to explore and to avoid AI and maneuver around them, because originally this game was designed to be just fighting the AI, and so that part of it holds up incredibly well. If you want to avoid the PvP side of the game, it's still quite enjoyable. Now that said, the PvP combat is also quite fun and varied. Outdoor firefights can involve distant sniping wars where interiors tend to get dominated by shotguns and grenades. In fact, shotguns felt like they were really becoming the meta. If you can jump on somebody in CQC with a shotty, it's rare that they'll live long enough to form any sort of decent retaliation.
So, really quick, you know what this looks like? You know the vibe I'm getting from here that it kind of giving me already? A much better looking and playing Fallout, right? And I'll get back to that in a bit, especially with that last bit where they showed themselves fighting outside with a unique environment too. Yeah, it's like, of course I'm bringing Fallout because I like Fallout too, so it's hard to not bring it up when you see someone who's clearly right in that realm and doing it so superior to them, right? But we'll get back to that.
Playing in parties, this can be mitigated a bit by strength in numbers gameplay, but going in solo shotguns can be absolutely devastating. And speaking of which, one of the rarely well-balanced elements of an extraction shooter is the solo versus duo versus trio gameplay. Most extraction games try to let you drop in solo and give you a good experience even if you're running into bigger teams than you, and in my opinion, it rarely works out, or it's rarely well balanced. Ark, in my opinion, also hasn't really solved this issue, though I will say when I matchmake solo, I mostly ran into other solo players. So it appears that the matchmaking system is working pretty well, and for the most part trying to match you up against only other solos and throw in parties when needed. But if you do run into a team while you're playing solo, it is pretty challenging to win a 1v2 or a 1v3 due to your weapons' often limited magazine sizes, the slower time to kill for a lot of weapons. There's a huge amount of time needed to kill, reload, and recharge your health and shields. So a solo player just really won't have that much time to do that in between killing different targets.
Bro,
so
look at that fog
parties just
moving.
have a huge advantage
I wonder if that was a smoke
a
grenade.
single player. I'm also not sure if solo dropping gives you any sort of additional benefits. Games like Hunt Showdown can let solo players drop in with some pretty top tier abilities that aren't available to groups, like the ability to revive yourself after getting downed. And it might be interesting to see if Ark goes down a path where they try and make solo play a little bit more balanced against teams or something like that.
Makes sense.
Now, running with a team,
I like that. If you're playing by yourself in a world map where there's multiple teams, I would love it if they gave you certain unique abilities that kind of made you feel like a boss, right? Because it's 3 against 1. Like, you could be a master solo, but if you're fighting 3 people who are so-so, right, who understand the game decently, you're probably going to have a bad time. Period. Right?
Is an absolute blast. Both trios and duos played out great. I played many games with Matimio, exploring and ganking or getting ganked ourselves. The AI are amazingly fun to fight against. You will get used to fighting and killing the basic enemies, but what's cool about the basic enemies is they are very much designed to attract other players to your location or even other bots, and even a small fight against robots can escalate quickly into something much more serious. And
that's pretty cool, actually, because yeah, usually if you hear a firefight happening, people are going to check it out. So if they design the AI, they typically appear in around areas where there's possibly multiple groups nearby. It could be fun visually just to kind of watch them go at it and then decide to go in, right? Or yeah, you'll go in while the fighting's happening. It becomes this big mess. I like that immensely.
Bigger AI are really where the game starts to take on a different feeling. The Queen, a massive spider robot which can rain down fire from across the map, is an absolutely wild concept. I've never seen a game AI that was so threatening from so far away.
Yeah, that's
It's
actually pretty cool.
pretty awesome. And Arc Raiders posted a statistic saying that like only 4 of these have been killed through the entire tech test or something like that. So the AI are quite challenging. I really enjoyed fighting this bison spider robot that has jump jets that lets it leap pretty far distances through the air. I've seen some clips of people having these
Sorry,
things
any
jump
issues with
like,
the video? That's
I don't
on
know,
my end.
300 meters towards them and landing on them. Like, there's all kinds of wild mechanics in the AI that you just don't see in a lot of other games, let alone a game that's multiplayer with PvP and PvE all mixed together. They're really pushing the AI to the next level, and I think they're benefiting a lot from the fact that, again, this game was originally conceived to be a PvE only game. Now,
That last part, incredibly important. I don't understand how we get so many simple enemies in these games sometimes. Maybe you can kind of argue, okay, they're trying to get the players used to them, and then they'll get more complicated later, but that's not always the case. Right? If you look at Dragon's Dogma 2, even at the level that I'm at, I still have trouble sometimes with a Cyclops, because not only do Cyclops have specific weaknesses, but they might have things on their bodies that make it harder for me to come at them at normal, so I have to go about it in different ways. The environment can also play a big part into this. My companions can as well. It can sometimes feel like you're playing with real people because they might not always do what you need them to in the right moment. Thus, every fight, no matter what your level or how powerful you think you are, may not always go in your favor, right? On top of that, enemies should just be interesting, and the AI should behave how you would imagine it. This is 2025. We have the technology, right? So that makes me happy to hear, because they should be challenging. They should be smart. They should make you want to rethink how you go about fighting them. That's stuff that makes that was stuff that Fallout 4, once again me bringing it out, was promising with their VAT system. Remember when it first was getting ready to come out? Oh, with VATs we made sure to make it so that now if you don't target the head, you'll get vastly different effects and it'll be worth it. And then when you got Fallout 4, it just ended up being so much better to target the head. And that was it. It's like wasn't really any different. They didn't really rethink VATs at all. Like, sure, I could target grenades and stuff, right, midair, but I could already do that. Like, give me more. Like, VATs is such a cool system because it slows the game down to a near halt, right? You could kind of turn it into it kind of becomes a turn-based RPG when you do that, right? And it's so cool. It's like, use that, push that even further. But you don't really see that. So I'm happy to see that they are doing that. One way, at least with the AI, right? That makes me very happy to hear.
Normally, I'm not a huge fan of third-person shooters for PvP combat. I think third-person can be really fun and enjoyable in PvE-style games, but third-person allows for a lot of peeking around corners and over cover without having to expose yourself to an enemy. And this becomes a bit like wall hacks in PvP games. And while I normally don't like this, one thing that it benefits Ark is that it makes pushing an enemy who is aware of you extremely challenging. And this means that highly aggressive teams can't just push you in an open area or push down a corridor and absolutely gank you because they have stronger numbers, or they can just outskill you in a firefight. The second they step out from behind their cover, you can peek and take some perfectly accurate shots at them, giving them a huge disadvantage for pushing in a straight line without flanking. So the third person perspective kind of gates some of that aggressive gameplay, which can be really nice for players who don't want a super sweaty extraction shooter. You can still play aggressively and hunt players, and you're definitely going to get ganked in this game, but it does force a lot of people to flank and try different tactics to close the distance to their enemies. So a smart defender can more often escape a bad situation, something that can be significantly more challenging in other extraction games. Now, some of the areas of Arc Raiders that doesn't quite feel dialed in, and hopefully this is something they can evolve and learn from the tech tests, are their key bindings, their user interface, and the current loot balance and pacing of looting gameplay. Arc is clearly designed with consoles in mind, as I think it's already got cross-platform play for the tech test, but some of the platform parity design becomes a detriment to PC players. The Q button opens up a context menu, and it's essentially a one-size-fits-all for all of your grenades, heal items, and any other gadgets you might need during a match or mid-combat. And sadly, this becomes a bit of a clumsy context menu, and I really didn't enjoy constantly trying to dial around to the item I needed in the middle of combat versus just being able to hit, like, say, a hotkey for a shield recharge or a bandage, which I would expect to be able to do in most other PC titles. I know that I can eventually get faster at the context menus, but it's clearly a system designed for consoles, and it...
Yeah, I was literally about to say that. It sounds like they were preparing it for, like, consoles and testing it. Because it is fast, but at the same time, he's right. It is a lot faster just to press the J button to heal, right? Rather than scroll. Even if you know exactly where it is, I can just tap the J button and it'll just begin, right? As an example. So yeah, it does sound like they were just testing it to see how it would work. And then that would be something easy they could bring to consoles. And yeah, right? But even then, with a console, I don't know what the control pad would be for if this was even on consoles for a playtest. But it would be cool, like, to be able to tie whatever you need exactly to, like, the control stick, right, up, down, left, right, and then also still have that, right? That would be superior. But otherwise, yeah, like he was saying, it's not a bad thing, but it can be annoying if you're on PC when you could just tap a button. So, yeah, that's not bad.
Just feels like a downgrade to a PC player that's used to having more input options. Now, after extracting, you'll get back to your home base where you can offload your loot, complete missions, and craft weapons and gear. The UI here is pretty clunky and annoying to navigate.
Wait, what? Hold up. 1 second. Scrappy the Rooster, level 2 forager. This rooster has been a resident of the workshop since the day you moved in, and likely long before that. Will periodic... Oh, it's a robotic rooster, most likely. Will periodically bring back dubiously sourced materials and share them with you. So you're telling me I can get robot animals to forage stuff for me and bring it back? So, dog meat, right? But I like that it's a rooster, and it's already doing a little bit better than Fallout for me, because I would love to be able to have more animal. Thank you. I like that. Now I'm very interested. I wonder if they'll up that later down the line and give me robotic dogs to mess with. What's up, JoJo? How's it going? We're watching a review on Arc Raiders from Embark Studios, the people who did the finals, which I love the finals, so I want to check this out. And this guy is convincing me. This game does sound really cool so far, right?
It is pretty clunky and annoying to navigate. Even after many hours of gameplay, I was still getting stuck and lost trying to figure out where to craft stuff, where to turn in my missions, and it just felt awkward and unnecessarily cumbersome. The finals, Embark's first game, also struggled with a clunky UI, which has gotten better over time, but I think UI design, or rather menu design, is not their strong point.
I know you're not a
showing
big
up again in
FPS person, neither am I.
I just felt like a lot of my time was spent unnecessarily trying to find the right recipes and crafting locations and upgrade areas and all this stuff in between rounds, slowing down the pace of getting into another match. It wasn't a huge detriment, and again, like the context menu, I will get faster with it over time, but it is something that feels inferior to a lot of other games, just user interface layouts.
That's very fair. Oh, it's always hard to, especially the more you have, it is always hard to do there's no perfect menu, right? You can only make it easier, make adjustments as you go. They're trying to make it so that you have everything available as fast as possible, but it's always an adjustment right, for every game, and it's one of those things you have to listen to the players and see what they're saying and then adjust from there, because obviously what they're talking about might work better for somebody else, right? But you're trying to get it in general the best for everybody, and that's hard to do. So there was a game we were playing recently that kind of Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm still having trouble in Dragon's Dogma 2 tracking certain things, right? But that's a more of a me thing because other games I was playing in the past. But it's actually been kind of hard to navigate certain things, and it took me a couple of weeks to get used to it. I'm used to it now. I finished playing Star Wars Shadows of the Empire last night. I'm taking a night off, but jumping back tomorrow to resume Star Wars Dark Forces. I've never heard of those. Those aren't the new Star Wars games that recently came out, right? Can't say
Beyond
I've heard
that,
of
the
those.
size of your backpack and the quantity of loot that you can carry in a match seems extremely limiting, especially for the amount of loot that you find on average, which is pretty high. It's pretty easy to max out your backpack and give you little reason to stick around in a match much longer. I found that when playing in a group especially, we would win a firefight against another group of players, loot everything they had, which would usually be a full bag, and then we just have to call it around and go find an extraction point instead of progressing towards the goal we may have set for ourselves at the start of a round.
So an easy fix. Wait, nope. Both are classic Star Wars games from the '90s. Okay, yeah, because I don't think I think my first Star Wars game I played was in like the 2000s. So yeah, I definitely don't know. I got you. Dark Forces and Shadows of the Empire. Dark Forces is actually a first-person shooter, like Doom and Quake. I guess that makes sense because at the time Doom and Quake were incredibly popular, especially Doom, right? So it makes sense that they would kind of do a clone. Now I'm kind of curious. So what they're talking about here with the backpack feeling too small, for sure, understand, but simple fix, just make it so that players can upgrade their backpack. Simplest fix, right? Because especially if like later, if this does this have carry weight? Yeah, it has a carry weight. So what you could do, just make it bigger, right? Just have two different upgrades, one for what you could possibly hold, right? And then another one for carry weight size. And it's a fantasy game, just make up for how it's going to work. Because then later on, the deeper you go into the game, you're most likely going to find rarer things and possibly heavier things based on whatever it is, right? So that's an easy fix I know they can make. So, but I get it because that is annoying. But yeah, the start low backpack, low carry weight, that's fine, right? Look at Dragon's Dogma 2. My carry weight was shit at the beginning of that game, but it's a lot better now.
Round.
So last night he used him.
It's also something, while I'm on it, it's also something I wish Fallout would do, since we're kind of talking about it. Instead of making it part of your passes, right? Like Fallout usually has some ability, which I would like both. They usually have an ability where you mutate a little bit, or you're strong and now you have more carry weight. I wish they would just allow me to have like a backpack or something on me that allows me to fit more on me, as in for an RPG purpose, right? Especially in a world like Fallout. Give me a little robot that carries my stuff, or actually they do companions, but I would like something to simple stuff, right?
So many rounds started off with us going, hey, I've got a cool key to explore this tower on this map. Let's deploy here and go to the tower. And then we go, oh, look, there's a group of enemy players. Let's fight them. We'd kill them, take their loot, and then just go, oh, I guess we turn around and go back now. And we'd never get to our objective because it kind of became pointless. I even had a few solo matches where I'd spawn in and I'd immediately hear an extraction elevator being called nearby. I'd walk over, see a player getting ready to extract, gank them easily during the extraction process because it's pretty easy when they're dialed into a console. You shoot them in the back and you get an easy kill, take their loot, and then I would just extract immediately with a full bag, and it felt very cheesy and unfair. So
yeah,
I hope that there's a way they can reduce some of these instances in the gameplay where you can just immediately drop in and win a firefight against a player who's just played a whole round and is now extracting. Now,
yeah, okay, that part I kind of like. That's cool because that would require protection, but it seemed like they required 2 people to open up this thing. One thing they could easily do is make it so that one person has to focus on the objective to open it while the other 2 protect, and they can warn them if something happens. That might go into an area where you could have drones that survey an area that you set up, right? There's a bunch of little ways they could make that better as they go along, but this is what beta tests and stuff is for, right? Which is another reason why they probably didn't give a release date, because it's like, with this person talking about now, if you're on the other end of that gank, that is kind of annoying, where you just did this big thing, had no way of defending against this because someone sniped to the back of your head and they just walk off immediately, right? That does suck. So I like hearing that, because hopefully the devs will listen, and knowing it's the finals people, I would like to think that they will.
Now, those are the lesser than aspects of Arc Raiders, and the fact that we're still in a tech test means that Embark are looking at all these factors and trying to make improvements, and what they've done with the finals gives me a huge amount of confidence in their ability to improve this game. Something that I'm really curious to see more of is how they're planning to expand Arc Raiders. Currently, the maps that you drop into are really cool looking, they play differently, and I think they could get a lot of longevity out of this game by just expanding their map roster, expanding their enemy AIs, which are extremely fun to fight against, expanding the gear types, the round events. It seems like they've really set up this game to expand in a lot of fun ways.
They have round
this game
events
is definitely shot to the top of my hype list, and I will be eagerly waiting a release. I'd be curious to know if you guys got into the second tech test and what you think about it. Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed my coverage of Arc Raiders, give me a thumbs up, subscribe for more content like it, and up next, check out some live gameplay of me playing with Operator Drewski and Big Fry right here. As always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap.
Okay, we will actually look at that a little bit while I'm talking. Right.
He's on this giant
I'm gonna mute him.
spider robot.
This game sounds cool. I like the idea. I don't play too many of these, or like I officially played like one-ish, right? But I think it was Outriders from Square Enix. And that game wasn't bad, but it did have some problems. And the biggest part, like I actually enjoyed the story. I thought it was cool, but the biggest problem for sure was that I didn't really get a lot of abilities to play with. Everything kind of felt spammy, and also like the end game was probably my least favorite, is because everything felt very corridorish. Like I said at the beginning of the video, once you do those final stages and you're just trying to get weapons, you're gonna do them like 30 times, right? And then after that, everything kind of becomes routine. You're just trying to get your abilities strong enough where you can just wipe out everything as fast as possible, move on as fast as possible. And I think it was time too, and I didn't really like that, because I think if you completed a stage within a certain amount of time and got whatever you got additional, but I thought that was stupid, because I shouldn't be pressured to just turn this into a race with a bunch of people, right? And at the same time, if it wasn't, I'd be so bored having to do this same stage 50 times for a certain type of loot that it gets boring. So I like the fact that they were explaining that everything that should make a video game like this exciting is exciting. You have very creative worlds, but once again, coming from people who worked on Battlefield games, makes sense, because Battlefield typically had interesting looking stages. Even the ones now, right, have interesting looking stages. They just lost a lot, which is being a lot of stuff being destroyable, but we're not talking about Battlefield right now, right? The finals overall is a very engaging experience as well, right? So it's not surprising that this translates to this. And one thing that they did say as they were going about it was that you're playing against AI, which the AI is incredibly smart, and then you're playing against characters as well. And then, of course, people are smart, but then you have AI that appears to engage with you at certain moments where people are close, right? While AI are also incredibly smart and able to target you from very far away, which makes other players curious and engages with you, right? That's all the formula for something like a Fallout, where you're easily dealing with some event or something's happening which attracts other enemies nearby. and they mess with you, right? It's that's what makes open world games fun. And then once again, the reason I was bringing up Fallout a lot, because look how this game looks. It doesn't look that different from Starfield, right? It doesn't look that different from Fallout, because yeah, it's an FPS shooter, and all of them kind of have this same look, but this one has a unique feel about it. And this is what excites me about Embark, because they have Finals that has a very vastly different look, and it's still an FPS, and anybody who thinks an FPS, they're all the same, you haven't played the Finals. And then looking at this, clearly looking at their experience from Battlefield, the Finals, that they're using to create this, and look at this, these costumes too, to create this, they could easily use what they have here and create their own like open world fantasy FPS game like a Fallout game, right? One of the things in Fallout that upset me was your AI companions were boring. Enemy companions were so straightforward. The RPG part about Fallout was greatly lacking, right? These guys already have incredible AI from what we're hearing about how you're engaging with them, right? I'm hoping that you'll have things about targeting certain weaknesses to get actual results that you're looking for, which open up other spots to be targeted, which is something that Fallout did not refuse to do in their game with their VAT system, which was so impressive. There was only like maybe 2 enemies I can think of that actually required you to target different parts because they were so insane, but otherwise, why? So if this game does that better with their robotic enemies along with the unique stuff that you can get, that's great, because I even already saw some gadgets that impressed me more than what I was seeing in Starfield, which is crazy because Starfield, you're at least in space, right, with a bunch of people with a bunch of different themes and almost no limit on the imagination when it comes to the tech they could be using. But this is basically that with better AI. That's insane, right? And it's one of those things that comes down to the devs that you're talking to, because we see indie games. Sure, an indie game may not have AI as good as this, but they do the best that they can to make that happen. And of course, it also depends on the budget, but then what's the excuse for someone like Bethesda, right? For someone like Square Enix, for someone like Ubisoft, for someone like Atlas to have shitty AI in their games when they are worth millions upon millions and can easily provide the funds. It's one of those things that Square Enix, where I'm very happy they mentioned, no idea if they're going to follow through, is that they're changing up their management style and how they're going about creating quality for their games, because they're starting to realize something's wrong, right? Is this an indie game? I'm not sure if Embark is considered indie, to be honest, Jojo. Some of them are devs that come from oh my god, what are they called? DICE, right? Which are the people who do Battlefield. But I'm not honestly sure if they're considered indie. But this is their second game that they're working on, right? Their first is the Finals. This is their second. So, yeah, like I'm not sure if they're considered indie, but what's cool about this, Jojo, if they are or not, they're showing that they have the competence to not only make sure that their game works, but make sure their enemies are interesting, right? Which is what we should always see. Final Fantasy 16. I loved Final Fantasy 16, but there were a couple of areas in that game that I could not forgive. One of them was the weapons and armor system, because when you're fighting Garuda, who is a wind Eidolon, right? Icon, excuse me, in this case. I was so excited to get her sword. I unlock her sword, it does nothing for my wind abilities. What they could have done was simply make it so, okay, you have Garuda's weapon, you can empower this to multiple points, and if you use a wind attack, let's say after using it you get an extra jump, or when you use a wind attack it creates a little tornado around you that protects you from enemies behind you. They didn't have to do anything else except give Garuda's weapon, give Ifrit's weapon, give Shiva's weapon a unique ability that only was possible with their abilities, and that would have added far more depth to the game. There was armor in Final Fantasy 16 that was from old games that had abilities on them that didn't have one in Final Fantasy 16. If I had put on an Arn chest plate, right, and it simply was like, you need to be hit one extra time to be knocked off your feet, that would have blown my fucking mind. But it came with nothing. It was just additional attack power, additional magic, and additional defense. That was it. I think you did have a knockdown thing, but you get what I'm saying, right? So, and another problem was that their smaller enemies were boring. Like the boss fights and their large enemies, hell yes. But the smaller enemies were nothing until hard mode, which makes you question that. And so we look back at this, where everything matters. Dragon's Dogma 2, all the enemies are effective and matter. Yeah, you can complain that maybe Dragon's Dogma 2 didn't have a lot of enemy variety that you fought throughout the game. But each and every one of them were impactful in something to remember, right? Goblins with their goblin tech, right? One goblin sees you, some of them try to get behind you, one will shoulder tackle you, and when you fall, and then one of them will start kicking you on the head, and the other goblins will start kicking you on the head, because, you know, your head is a weak point, and then you'll have two more goblins in the back laughing at you, right? Because they're fucking goblins, and they can't help themselves, right? The behavior of the griffins, the behavior of the cyclopses and chimeras are all very unique and well thought out, and how you can go about each of those fights makes a big difference. Whereas in Fallout, sure, I get a bunch of different raiders with different weapons, but what does that mean when I'm killing them all in the same way and they're all incredibly stupid? What's the difference between a super mutant and this mutant guy raider when all I have to do is really shoot them in the head because their only tactic is run at me and swing their arms, right? There's a big difference between that and something like this and Dragon's Dogma 2. And something else that they mentioned at the beginning was their audio quality, which is something else that needs to be thought about in every single game, right? Sure, it might not matter so much for something, let's say, like a Final Fantasy IX where it's turn-based, even though it still very much matters for the impact of everything that you're going through, right? Like, feeling how an impact hits is nice, right? Well, goblins gonna be goblins, exactly, right? But it's like, goblins gonna be goblins, but then you'll get, like, the most bare-bones goblins in any other game where they're just goblin-looking, and they're attacking with knives, and that's it, really? No, Dragon's Dogma 2 makes me laugh, because a goblin will get a good shot and stab me in the stomach. I'm not dead, but he'll just start laughing at me and be like, stupid human, I'll get up and kill him. It's like, why? Why did you do that? And it's because I'm a goblin. I stabbed you. It was funny, guy. Of course I'm going to fall over and laugh, even if you kill me, right? There's a character to this goblin, and I like that so much. Right. So seeing this and what they're doing here when it comes to thinking about how the AI is interacting with your party and other parties, right? And the little things that you can do that makes things interesting for this extraction shooter where you're constantly upgrading your stuff. That's important because this can easily once they perfect this could translate into a single player game like a Fallout, right? Or not even a Fallout, something like a Dragon's Dogma if they decided to do that. Dragon's Dogma are masters of employing goblins as professional linebackers. Exactly, you getting shoulder tackled by two? Man, you're not going to get to the goalpost. You got to go through all of us doing that, right? And then there's different type of goblins that behave different ways. They're like people trying to come at you in their own unique way. Yeah. That's fucking intense, PyCon. It's something that we need to see and feel and get from everything that we play. Because, yeah, it might just be a robot. But how are you imagining that robot behaving, right? A T-1000 is far different, right? It's going to behave in a different way, completely different from, let's say... Oh, let's just pick one. Those brainhead guys at the end of the Matrix, right? Just floating around with the EMPs, right? They shouldn't just be behaving the same way, even though they have different shapes, because you will get that sometimes, right? And that's dumb. Or excuse me, the T-1000 in the laser shooting death robots from Fallout, right? They should behave and come at you differently, especially since AI in Fallout have shown to have exceeded, right, to from their normal standards of just being a robot to some sort of sentience. Sometimes we should see that, right? So I like this. I like this from all many conceptual levels, right? That they are putting their heart into what they're trying to create for this PvE PvP experience that really thrives on both. And look at this stage; this looks great, by the way, right? And forgive me if you're seeing any cuts or anything like that. It might just be what I'm looking at, but this looks intense. Right, I'm loving everything that we're looking at right now, and it's something that we should see more of, right? So, you guys, this is Arc Raiders Evolved, or excuse me, Arc Raiders that we were looking at, and from this guy, Level Cap Gaming, right? It should be in the Discord if you guys are there. And this was nice to look at. This makes me happy to see. I'm very interested in it now. So, but what we're gonna do, I'll be going over this more later. I'll post it up somewhere, right, and let you guys know. But we're about to go to Dragon's Dogma right now, so please stand by. We'll be right back, and thank you very much.